My name is Daniel Thompson. I'm an associate professor of religious studies, and I'm currently the chair of the Department of Religious Studies. The Summa Theologia is one of three different so-called summaries of theology that Thomas Aquinas wrote during his lifetime. He started the Summa Theologia, sometimes called the Summa Theologica, summary of theology, around 1265. He did not finish it. He died in 1274 with some of the last part incomplete, and it was completed by his with excerpts from parts of his other writings. So the best explanation for what the Summa Theologia is, believe it or not, is Thomas's own introduction, where he says that many other people have tried to write summaries, and some of them are boring, and some of them aren't well done. And because it's necessary for students studying theology to have a good introductory text, I'm going to write you one. It technically has three parts: one on God, second on us, and the third on Christ as our way back to God. Now, the structure of the Summa is very complex. The easiest way to think about it, there have been a variety of different ways that over the many 800 years the Summa has been described, is to think of the Summa as a large circle or a loop. That is, Thomas thinks of the Summa along the lines of the way that God interacts with human beings. So, if at the top of the circle or the top of the loop there is God, and so the first part of the Summa deals with God and God's own nature, after a short introduction about the nature of theology. So there's God and God's own nature in the Trinity, and then sort of flowing out from God, then he talks about God's creation, about the nature of creation, the nature of the world, the nature of human beings. And then, that's at the end of that first part, he moves in from talking about how things flow out from God to talking about us. So the second part of the Summa Theologia is about human beings, right? And they're both in their general principles of their action, and then their specific actions. So the first part deals with what we would call today sort of we might want to call a moral psychology, right? What is it that makes people who they are? What goes into them? Their will, their mind, their feelings, their passions. How are we structured? How are we built? And then the second part of that section then deals with, okay, you have all these feelings, emotions, thoughts, structure, will, action. How are you supposed to act on them, right? So the second part of the second part, if that makes any sense, deals with virtues and vices. What are the proper things to do? What are the improper things to do? What's the measure of those things that you do? Because the goal for Aquinas is that everything that flows out from God goes back to God. And being a Christian theologian in the Middle Ages, those things which flow out from God have fallen, right? So they can't get back to God by themselves. So the third and last part of the Summa is about the way that human beings return to God, which is through Christ. So the last part of the Summa is what in contemporary theology is called a Christology. That is a theological discussion about who Jesus is and what Jesus does for us, right? Well, how does Jesus get us back towards God? And so he talks about Jesus and the Incarnation, and being a medieval Christian, of course, he talks about at length about the sacraments through the Church as a means by which human beings, in a sense, have their structure, their will, their knowledge, their aims perfected and clarified and corrected so that they can return back to God.